There is a veritable fire hose of new manga and anime releasing all the time, so it's important to have a premise that really stands out. This isn't always easy in the comedy slice-of-life subgenre, where relatability is highly valued. Anime as an art form is sort of known for its bizarre premises. Exiled angels use transforming lingerie to fight evil spirits for profit to buy their way back into heaven. A vase painter from ancient Greece is struck by lightning and transported repeatedly back and forth between his present time and the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo. Whatever the heck was going on in Fooly Cooly. Watching an episode of a good, cozy slice-of-life show is nothing like that. It feels like hanging out with friends, where you're silent and watch everyone from a distance and they never notice you or talk to you. It's like hanging out with friends. Shows like The Daily Lives of High School Boys, Lucky Star, or Strawberry Marshmallow are all entertaining shows, but when it comes to spreading the word about them, there's not much more you can say about the premise other than the characters hang out and get a bit silly. Laid Back Camp is an example of a series which broadly follows the same format of those shows, but took a reliable, if a bit uninteresting approach to carving itself a space in the market without straying too far into the bizarre, focusing on a hobby. Can you guess which one? Laid Back Camp is exactly what it says on the tin. Following in the footsteps of the aforementioned easygoing, comedic, non-confrontational series, we follow a group of Japanese youngsters as they kinda just hang out, go camping, and eat and eat and eat. A solid chunk of the chapters really are just named after the food they eat. Now, when you do a show about board games, or working out, or playing an instrument, that's one thing. But an anime about the joys of camping in the great outdoors, away from all those pesky screens, you know? There's something about that feels at odds with itself. If you love camping so much, go camp, idiot. Don't sit inside and watch a show about it. Now, obviously, realistically, you can't, camp 24/7, and there are associated costs and travel, seasonal availability. I get it. Obviously, the show has a place, but it does, by virtue of its own premise, bring forward that feeling of, what are we doing here, you know? But ultimately, the camping is more or less the flavor, the spice, that dresses up an otherwise pretty standard structure that we've already seen for years. That doesn't make it bad, far from it. It's actually one of my favorite cozy anime, though I know you can't tell right now by how I'm talking about it. But it really isn't special either. There's plenty of other manga and anime that are going for the same end goal, to create that same feeling in the audience of general coziness. And that's cool and all, but it's also uncomplicated. By design. Shallow, intentionally. That's what makes it cozy. And there's a time and place for that for sure, but I saw a movie recently that turned my view on the show upside down, that complicated the intentionally uncomplicated, that had striking similarities to Laid Back Camp, about camping in or around the Yamanashi Prefecture in the winter. And no, it isn't the Laid Back Camp movie. But before we get into it, let's talk merchandise. Manga as an art form are generally very small-scale productions. The art done by one or two people, the story done by one or two others, or all of it handled by a single person, as is the case with Laid Back Camp. I'm sure publishers have input, of course, but even then, we're talking a very small number of people. And when something is so small, it doesn't have the need, or really even the means, to exist much beyond itself. But animation is obviously harder to produce. It literally just takes more work. More drawings, it has to be in color, needs music, and so on. And so it needs more funding, and more people to create. The barrier for entry is that much higher, and so there's that much less anime in existence, less competition, and all the more incentive to sell merch. Now, let's talk about this movie. Some heavier entertainment. The antithesis of Laid Back Camp. Unlaid Back Camp. High-strung camp. Evil does not exist. That's the name. It's a 2023 drama about, wouldn't you know it, camping. Glamping, actually. And not about doing it, but about the human and environmental costs of creating a hyper-real glamp site to attract tourists from big ol' Tokyo to little ol' Mizubiki Village. When I watched this movie, the parallels to Laid Back Camp immediately jumped out at me. First off, as mentioned on a surface level, they're Japanese visual media about camping set during the winter with an emphasis on displaying the natural beauty of the land, the preparation of food. Yeah, that's most of it. But when you dig ever so slightly deeper, both are about tourism, but are at total ideological odds from each other. Laid-back Camp, like many anime, sets its story in real-world locations, with backgrounds so similar to their real-world counterparts that you can sometimes find the exact spot, the identical view the mangaka used as reference. Fans have mapped out the exact locations the girls camp at and places they stop along the way to rest or to eat. Obviously, living outside of Japan, it isn't like I'm just gonna hop over there and have a gander at the places visited in the series, but you could, and I'd bet some people who do live in or travel to Japan would spend some time doing just that. And they do. Here's a little detour. Zombieland Saga's plot centers around revitalizing tourism in Saga, one of Japan's 47 prefectures, and the show itself did make at least a non-zero impact on tourism. Anime News Network reported the building that was used as the basis for the idol group's home received 1,000 visitors for a tour event themed around the show. It's a real phenomenon. It's not the easiest to really grasp this as someone who lives in the US, but they've just got this giant Gundam someplace in Tokyo. It isn't like here where our biggest animated show is The Simpsons, and they're in a theme park. Who cares? The media, especially in the slice of life genre, is more enmeshed into real-world spaces you can visit, even though we're ultimately talking about comics and cartoons. So in a very real way, a show about traveling around and camping in Yamanashi Prefecture, where Laid-back Camp is set, is promoting real-world tourism. Okay, so now let's get back to Evil Does Not Exist. This movie hates tourism. It does not want you to go to Mizubiki. Mizubiki isn't a real place, first off. I mean, it's a movie filmed on Earth, outdoors, so you can visit the filming locations, but you know what I mean. The plot focuses on Takumi, the expert on the local outdoors, his 8-year-old daughter Hana, and 2 talent agent representatives, Takahashi and Mayuzumi, who handle the grunt work of dealing with the locals and getting the glamping project rolling. Except, upon presenting it to the locals, they're met with many valid concerns about the impact of the project. Mundane things like, it's an area with a lot of wild deer, and the septic tank capacity isn't sufficient, and could impact local water quality. Scintillating, I know. It's hard to put into words if you haven't seen it, but as mundane as it all sounds, it's very compelling in its presentation, and even more so in its ideas. Takumi is such an outdoors guy. Almost all we see him do is directly engage with the outside world with his own 2 paws. He's chopping wood, collecting water from the stream for a local restaurant by the ladle, collecting feathers, identifying plants. Even his clothes are darkly colored, allowing him to visually blend with his surroundings, especially in the film's foggier moments. Compare this to Takahashi, a disillusioned actor who seems to genuinely want out of his job into something like what Takumi has, but he's from the big city, he's an outsider. Takumi speaks rarely, and everything he says gets right to the point. Takahashi speaks through that unfortunately familiar corporate filter, that we'll take your feedback into account, thank you very much kind of way. It's very unnatural relative to Takumi's natural. His clothing matches. He wears a neon orange jacket that stands out like a sore thumb among the browns and grays of the woods, making him not only visually appear as an outsider, but also like a hunter, a predator preying on the local community with his project that seems so flawed that it's destined for failure, yet he has to push for it regardless, because that's just his job. He's just playing his part in all this. When Takahashi and Mayuzumi go back to Tokyo to have a meeting with their boss, they describe how the locals pointed out so many flaws, and how they were all valid concerns. And the boss says, that's good, actually. It shows you're communicating with the locals and letting them blow off steam. Their feelings, their part in all this, is up to someone on a screen. And yes, they went to Tokyo to do a video call and then drove all the way back. No, it doesn't make sense to me either. Who doesn't even have to deal with the actual interactions with the townsfolk? This is obviously how virtually all companies in the real world are structured. Layers of safeguards, a term here used to mean living, breathing people, are placed between the people in charge and the people their decisions at best inconvenience and at worst outright harm to insulate the leaders from the consequences of their actions. Takahashi, as a character, is more nuanced than simply being a corporate puppet, but from the perspective of the townsfolk, most importantly from the perspective of Takumi, that's all he can ever be. And now we're getting into how this is actually like an anti-capitalist narrative, but let's be real, I've kind of heard so much about anti-capitalist stuff that I get it, I'd rather talk about the tourism angle, which is ultimately just a different flavor of the same thing. But here we go. The crux of it is, near the start of the movie, Takumi is walking through the woods with Hana, his daughter, identifying different plants with her, and they have this exchange. She's about to touch a plant, He says, don't touch it, it's Siberian ginseng. It has thorns, even deer don't eat its berries. Are they tasty? Well, they're a bit too hard for people, but they can be made into a drink like wine. You're not into that. Like I said, Takumi gets right to the point when he talks, so it isn't a ton to go on, and it feels innocuous, especially since this exchange is right near the start of the movie. But it captures a core idea. The Siberian ginseng is a plant, and so obviously is natural. It's present, it's there, a part of the woods, a part of the community. But the plant, the woods, the town isn't palatable to the masses. The locals can see the beauty in the mundane, in the trees, the stream, the giant pile of manure. I'm listing visuals from the movie, just take my word for it, they make this stuff look gorgeous, but it isn't something that people would travel to see. But it can be made into, transformed into, a glamping site that is attractive, that does have broad appeal. But he doesn't like that. This conversation about a plant's thorns as he carries his daughter through the woods lays out the entire thesis of the film. Some things are better left untouched, to their own devices. To make it palatable for the masses is to destroy it for those who respect it, who live it. It has thorns, but it's a part of the place, and when the destruction of what you love is at stake, you don't take that lying down. At the end of the film, violence suddenly erupts as Takumi finds his daughter attacked by a wounded deer. He chokes Takahashi and runs with her body into the woods. The ending is vague. It's unclear if Takumi's daughter is dead or just injured, if Takahashi will die or if he's just unconscious. What happens to Takumi next? It's a complex ending too. Even though they foreshadow the heck out of the deer attack, Takumi attacking Takahashi is a total left field moment. Before you can process it, the credits are already rolling. I see it as the logical extension of Takumi fully fitting in with nature. Like the deer, he's timid, but when he's wounded, hurt by the sight of his daughter attacked by the very thing he wants to protect, he fights and he runs. No better or worse than nature, but himself a part of it. Now, that's a pretty dramatic ending to a film that revels in the mundane, but I think it would be a mistake to focus too much on analyzing the ending as a separate unit of film, so to speak. In context, it's ultimately just the logical conclusion of what's already been set up, or that's how I view it. But to bring it back home, Evil Does Not Exist reads as a takedown of Laid Back Camp. It puts forward Laid Back Camp as vain, consumable, discardable, and it won't accept the excuse that the show is harmless, innocuous, uncomplicated, and therefore unable to cause evil. Evil does not exist, in that everyone views their actions as rational relative to their own motivations of profit, protecting the environment, or just being a cozy little show. But everything has consequences, and that push and pull is just as natural as anything else. So that's my take, what the movie got me thinking about. What you think? Comment, and I won't read it. Sorry, not sorry, but talk amongst yourselves. I'm busy. I'm making a game. I have, so much to do.